The morning air on New Geneva still carried the scent of burning plastic and charred metal. 3 days after the orbital bombardment, Captain Sarah Chen stepped carefully through the rubble of what had once been the Meridian Children's Academy, her combat boots crunching on broken glass and twisted steel. Behind her, the recovery teams worked in grim silence, their scanners beeping softly as they searched for any remaining survivors. There weren't any. Sarah knelt beside a small crater where the playground used to be. The swings were gone, melted into abstract sculptures of metal and polymer. A child's lunchbox lay partially buried in the debris, its bright cartoon characters now blackened and unrecognizable. She closed her eyes and tried to push down the rage that had been building in her chest since the first reports came in. 70,000 children. The number echoed in her mind like a death knell. 70,000 human children attending schools across 12 colony worlds, all struck simultaneously by the Galactic Empire's Third Fleet. No warning, no mercy, no survivors. Captain Chen? Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared at her elbow, his young face pale beneath his helmet. Command wants you back at the forward base immediately. Priority Alpha communication from Earth. Sarah stood slowly, brushing the ash from her knees. She'd seen war before, had fought the Krillian border conflicts, survived the siege of Proxima Station, even led the counterattack during the Vegan uprising. But this was different. This wasn't soldiers fighting soldiers. This was the systematic murder of children who'd never held a weapon, never fired a shot, never even known they were at war. The transport back to base was a silent affair. Sarah stared out the window at the devastated landscape below. New Geneva had been one of humanity's crown jewels, a world of green hills and crystal-clear lakes where families came to build new lives away from Earth's crowded cities. Now it looked like the surface of a dead moon, scarred with impact craters and burning forests. At the base, Admiral Harrison was waiting for her in the secure communications chamber. His weathered face was carved from stone, but Sarah could see the fury burning in his gray eyes. Behind him, the massive holographic display showed tactical readouts from all 12 attacked colonies. Red markers indicated complete devastation. There were no yellow or green markers, Captain, Harrison said without preamble. How familiar are you with Earth's Sniper Corps? Sarah frowned. The Sniper Corps was something of a legend, whispered about in military circles but never officially acknowledged. Elite marksmen and women recruited from every branch of Earth's military, trained to impossible standards, and deployed on missions that didn't officially exist. Some said they were ghosts. Others claimed they were humanity's answer to the galaxy's deadliest threats. I know the rumors, sir. Long-range elimination specialists. Off-the-books operations. High-value targets. Harrison nodded grimly. The rumors don't do them justice. I've just received word from Earth. The Sniper Corps has been activated under Emergency Protocol 7. Total war authorization against the Galactic Empire. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Emergency Protocol 7 hadn't been invoked since the early days of human expansion, when the colony ships were still finding their way among the stars. It meant no rules of engagement, no Geneva Conventions, no mercy. Sir, what exactly does that mean? Harrison touched a control on his wrist and the display changed to show personnel files. Faces appeared, men and women of various ages and backgrounds, but all sharing the same cold, calculating look in their eyes. Their service records were heavily redacted, showing only the barest details of their training and deployment history. It means, Captain, that every high-ranking member of the Galactic Empire's military and political structure has just become a target. The Corps doesn't just eliminate individuals. They eliminate bloodlines, family trees, anyone connected to the decision-makers who authorized the murder of our children. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How many snipers are we talking about, sir? Classified, but I can tell you this much. They've been training for scenarios like this for over 2 decades. Long-range infiltration, deep cover operations. Some of them have been positioned in Empire space for years, waiting for activation codes. The display showed a star map of the galaxy, with human colonies marked in blue and Empire territory in red. Suddenly, dozens of green dots appeared scattered throughout the red zones, pulsing like distant stars. Each dot represented a Sniper Corps operative already in position. The Empire thinks they can terrorize us into submission by targeting our children, Harrison continued. They're about to learn that humanity doesn't negotiate with child killers. We eliminate them. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. What's my role in this, sir? You're being reassigned to Special Operations Command. Your new mission is to coordinate intelligence gathering for core operations. Every Empire official, every military commander, every politician who signed off on this atrocity, we need to know where they are, who they care about, and how to reach them. A new file appeared on the display, showing grainy surveillance footage of a tall, reptilian figure in ornate military dress. The nameplate read, General WarHFY, Supreme Commander, 3rd Fleet. This is our primary target, Harrison said. General WarHFY personally ordered the bombardment of our colonies. Intelligence suggests he's currently stationed on the Empire capital world of Zerion Prime, surrounded by layers of security that would make a direct military assault impossible. Sarah leaned forward, studying the alien's features. WarHFY had the typical Zerithian build, 7 feet tall, scaled skin, predatory eyes that saw in multiple spectrums. His uniform was decorated with medals and ribbons, including what looked like a new commendation, probably awarded for the successful pacification of human colonies. How do we reach him? Harrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We don't, the Corps does. Our job is to make sure they have everything they need to do theirs. The communication chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of the quantum encryption arrays. Sarah looked at the faces on the display again, these ghosts of Earth's military who moved through shadows and killed from impossible distances. She thought about the children on New Geneva, about their laughter silenced forever, about the families torn apart by Empire cruelty. When do we start, sir? We already have. The Corps received their activation code 6 hours ago. By now the first operations are already underway. The Empire wanted to send us a message with their massacre. We're about to send them one back. Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez pressed herself against the crystalline wall of the Zerithian embassy complex, her adaptive camouflage suit shifting its colors to match the alien architecture. 27 floors above the bustling streets of Kepler Station, she had the perfect vantage point to observe her target through the scope of her modified plasma rifle. Admiral Zethkar was enjoying his victory celebration, completely unaware that death was watching him through crosshairs calibrated to his alien physiology. The Zerithian naval commander had personally led the strike force that devastated the human colony on Harmony. 3,000 children had died in their schools. While Zethkar watched from his flagship's bridge, recording the bombardment for later viewing, Elena had watched that recording. Every member of Earth's Sniper Corps had been forced to watch all the attack footage as part of their mission briefings. The Empire wanted to break human morale by showing the methodical destruction of their youngest generation. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than broken morale. They had created focused hatred in the hearts of the galaxy's most skilled killers. Through her scope, Elena could see Zethkar raising a ceremonial chalice filled with Zerithian victory wine. The alien's scaled features were twisted into what passed for a smile among his species, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth around him. Other Empire officials laughed and congratulated themselves on their successful terrorism campaign. Elena's finger found the trigger. At this range, with this weapon, the shot would be instantaneous. Zethkar would never know what hit him. But the orders from Earth were specific. Death was too quick, too merciful. The Empire needed to understand that actions had consequences. She shifted her aim slightly to the left and squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt struck the ceremonial chalice, vaporizing it instantly and sending superheated metal fragments into Zethkar's face. The Admiral screamed, his scaled hands clawing at his ruined eyes as chaos erupted around him. Security forces rushed into the room, but they were looking for attackers inside the building, not snipers positioned on adjacent structures. Elena was already moving, her suit's adaptive camouflage making her nearly invisible as she rappelled down the embassy's exterior wall. The message had been delivered. Zethkar would live, but he would be blind for the rest of his life. A constant reminder to the Empire that humanity could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. 6,000 light-years away on the Empire frontier world of Gorvak, Corporal Marcus Thompson was putting the finishing touches on his own message. The local garrison commander, Colonel Rexoth, had boasted publicly about the cleansing of human parasites from the galaxy. His estate outside the capital city was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy shields and automated defense systems. Marcus had been studying the compound for 3 weeks, mapping guard rotations, identifying weak points, learning the daily routines of everyone inside. The Empire's arrogance was their weakness. They believed their technology made them untouchable, that primitive human weapons couldn't penetrate their defenses. They were wrong. Marcus didn't need to penetrate their defenses. He just needed to be patient. Every morning at exactly 0800 local time, Colonel Herexoth took his pet Gorvanian lizard for a walk in his private garden. The creature was the size of a small horse with iridescent scales that caught the morning sunlight. Herexoth was extremely fond of the animal, treating it like a beloved child. Marcus had positioned himself in the ruins of an ancient temple nearly 2 kilometers away, his rifle's smart scope tracking wind patterns and atmospheric distortion. The shot would be challenging even by Corps standards, but Marcus had trained for impossible shots his entire career. He breathed slowly, steadying his heart rate, becoming one with his weapon. At exactly 0801, Colonel Herexoth emerged from his mansion with the Gorvanian lizard trotting beside him. The alien officer was wearing his dress uniform, probably planning to attend another celebration of human children's deaths. Marcus watched through his scope as Herexoth patted the lizard's head affectionately, speaking to it in the clicking, hissing language of his species. Marcus adjusted for wind speed and fired. The smart bullet flew across 2 kilometers of alien atmosphere, its guidance system making micro-corrections for air pressure and temperature variations. It struck the Gorvanian lizard directly in the head, killing the creature instantly. Herexoth's anguished wail could be heard across the entire compound as he cradled his dead pet, tears streaming down his scaled face. By the time Empire security forces reached the temple ruins, Marcus was gone, melted back into the wilderness like a ghost, but he left behind a simple message carved into the temple's ancient stone. For every human child, an Empire child dies. The message wasn't literal. The Corps wasn't targeting actual Empire children. That would make them no better than the monsters they hunted. But the Empire's leaders loved their pets, their treasures, their symbols of status and power. The Corps would strip all of that away, piece by piece, until the cost of their atrocity became unbearable. On the diplomatic world of New Carthage, Staff Sergeant Lisa Park had spent 2 months infiltrating the household staff of Governor Yixthan, the Empire administrator who had signed the execution order for the colony strikes. Park's mission wasn't assassination. It was psychological warfare of the most personal kind. Governor Yixthan collected pre-spaceflight artifacts from dozens of worlds, including Earth. His private museum contained priceless historical items stolen from conquered civilizations. Roman coins, Mayan sculptures, Chinese pottery, Egyptian jewelry, treasures looted from Earth's ancient past and displayed like trophies in the governor's private chambers. Park had been slowly poisoning the collection's preservation systems with a specially designed nanite virus. The microscopic machines were programmed to target specific materials while leaving everything else untouched. One by one, Yixthan's precious human artifacts were crumbling to dust, their molecular bonds destroyed by invisible sabotage. The governor had already discovered the destruction of 3 pieces, including a Ming Dynasty vase that had survived on Earth for 600 years, only to be destroyed in an alien's trophy room. Yixthan was frantically trying to preserve the rest of his collection, hiring the galaxy's best conservation experts, installing new security systems, even posting armed guards around each display case. Nothing worked. The nanites were already embedded in every human artifact, dormant until activated by Park's remote commands. She could destroy 1 piece per day, or save them all for a coordinated strike that would eliminate the entire collection simultaneously. Each option had its own psychological impact. The slow destruction created constant anxiety and paranoia. The simultaneous destruction would be a devastating shock. Park decided on the slow approach. Every morning, Governor Yixthan would wake up wondering which piece of stolen human history would turn to dust that day. The uncertainty was eating away at his sanity, making him jumpy and suspicious of everyone around him. His staff reported that he barely slept anymore, spending his nights wandering through the museum, checking and rechecking each display case. The Corps' operations were having their intended effect across Empire space. Reports were flooding in of high-ranking officials increasing their security, canceling public appearances, and relocating to more heavily defended facilities. Some were even requesting transfers to distant frontier posts, hoping to escape the reach of human vengeance. But there was nowhere to run. Earth's sniper corps had been planning for this day for over 2 decades. They had operatives embedded throughout Empire space, weapons caches hidden on dozens of worlds, and intelligence networks that reached into the highest levels of alien government. The Empire had murdered 70,000 human children, believing that such brutality would break humanity's will to resist. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in the shadows for too long. Earth's protectors were no longer content to simply defend. They were hunting, and they would not stop until every single person responsible for those children's deaths had paid the price. High Admiral Keth Voris stood before the massive tactical display in the Empire's Strategic Command Center on Xerion Prime, his forearms gesturing angrily at the holographic star map. Red alert indicators flashed across dozens of systems where his commanders had reported mysterious attacks, equipment failures, and what the humans called accidents. "Explain to me," Keth Voris hissed through his translator, his voice carrying the clicking undertones of his insectoid species. "How Admiral Zethkar was blinded in the middle of our most secure embassy. Explain how Colonel Hrexaw's pet died from a sniper shot that no one could trace. Explain how Governor Yixthan's museum is crumbling to dust despite our best preservation technology." The assembled intelligence officers shifted nervously. General Vorthak, the architect of the human colony attacks, cleared his throat with a sound like grinding stone. "High Admiral, our analysis suggests coordinated sabotage by human infiltrators, but their methods are unlike anything we've encountered before. They're not targeting military installations or strategic assets. They're attacking individuals with surgical precision." Keth Voris's compound eyes fixated on the Zerithian general. "Are you telling me that these primitive apes have somehow penetrated our security networks and are conducting personal vendettas against our leadership?" "That appears to be the case, sir. Intelligence estimates suggest they have operatives positioned throughout our space. Our security sweeps have found no trace of them. Either they're exceptionally well trained, or they've been in position for years, possibly decades." The thought sent cold dread through Keth Voris's exoskeleton. The idea that human spies had been living among them, watching, learning, waiting for the right moment to strike, challenged everything the Empire believed about their superiority over primitive species. What about the human government? Have they issued any official statements about these attacks? Director Zakth of Intelligence stepped forward, his tentacled head swaying as he consulted his datapad. "The human Earth government officially denies any knowledge of these operations. They claim they're investigating reports of rogue elements within their military, but our analysts believe this is merely diplomatic cover. The coordination and sophistication of these attacks suggests official sanction at the highest levels." Keth Voris studied the tactical display more closely. The attacks weren't random. They followed a clear pattern, targeting the specific individuals who had been involved in planning or executing the colony bombardments. Someone had access to classified Empire military records and was systematically working through a hit list. "Have we identified any of these human operatives?" "Negative, sir. They leave no physical evidence, no biological traces, no digital footprints. It's as if they're ghosts. Our best behavioral analysis suggests we're dealing with individuals who have been trained specifically for deep cover infiltration and elimination missions." General Vorthak stepped closer to the display, his scaled fingers tracing the locations of recent incidents. "High Admiral, I recommend we accelerate our planned offensive against the remaining human colonies. If we can eliminate their population centers quickly enough, these terrorist operations will cease to matter." The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Keth Voris considered it carefully. The original plan had been to use the colony attacks as a demonstration of Empire power, forcing the humans to surrender without further conflict. Instead, they seemed to have provoked a shadow war that was making his commanders paranoid and jumpy. "How many additional human colonies remain?" 43 confirmed population centers, Vorthak replied. "Another 16 suspected frontier settlements. Total estimated population of 8 million humans." Before Keth Voris could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in pulsing red as blast doors automatically sealed the entrances. The tactical display flickered and then showed a new alert. "Security breach. Level Alpha. All personnel to emergency stations." "What's happening?" Keth Voris demanded. Commander Yethal of Station Security appeared on the main communication screen, his normally composed features twisted with panic. "Hi, Admiral. Someone has infiltrated the detention level. All security cameras on level 15 have been disabled. We're getting reports of explosions and weapons fire." The detention level. Kethovorus felt his blood turn cold. Level 15 housed the Empire's most valuable prisoners, including the human diplomats who had been captured during the initial colony attacks. If someone was attempting a rescue operation, how is that possible? Level 15 is sealed behind 20 meters of hardened duralloy. The only access is through 3 separate security checkpoints with biometric scanners. "Unknown, sir. Security teams are moving to intercept, but..." Ythal paused as another explosion echoed through the communication channel. "Sir, we're losing contact with our teams. Something is systematically eliminating our security forces." On the main tactical display, a new schematic appeared showing the interior layout of the detention level. Security icons representing guard posts and checkpoints were winking out one by one, creating a path of destruction leading directly to the high-security cells. General Vorthak stared at the display in disbelief. "That's impossible. No single individual could fight their way through an entire level of our best security troops. Unless," Director Zakth said quietly, "it's not a single individual." The horrible truth began to dawn on Kethovorus. The human attacks throughout Empire space weren't just psychological warfare. They were diversions, drawing attention and resources away from Zarian Prime while a strike team infiltrated the most secure facility in the galaxy. "How many human prisoners are on level 15? 12 diplomatic personnel and their families," Vorthak answered. "Including Ambassador Chen and her daughter, Sarah Chen." Kethovorus knew that name. The human ambassador had been one of the most vocal critics of Empire expansion policies. Her capture had been considered a significant diplomatic victory. Her daughter was only 8 years old, held as insurance against any human rescue attempts. The communication screen flickered again, showing a new feed from Level 15's main corridor. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on walls scarred by weapons fire and explosion damage. Bodies of Empire security troops lay scattered across the floor, their advanced armor pierced by what appeared to be conventional projectile weapons. Then a figure stepped into the camera's view. The human was tall and lean, dressed in matte black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Advanced optics covered the upper half of the figure's face, and multiple weapons were attached to a tactical harness across the chest and shoulders. But what made Kethovorus's breath catch was how calmly the figure moved through the carnage, as if walking through an empty hallway rather than the aftermath of a violent battle. The figure looked directly at the camera and raised a gloved hand. In that hand was a small device that Kethovorus recognized as a quantum detonator. The human held it for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for everyone watching to understand what was about to happen, then activated it. The camera feed went dead as the explosion destroyed not just the surveillance equipment, but the entire section of Level 15 where the human prisoners were being held. "Status report." Kethovorus roared. Commander Ythal's voice came back through the communication system, strained with exhaustion. "Hi, Admiral, the detention level has been neutralized. All security barriers are down. We're detecting multiple hull breaches leading to external landing bays. And, sir, the prisoners are gone. All of them." The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of the tactical displays. Kethovorus stared at the schematic of Level 15, now showing massive structural damage and complete system failures. A single human operative had infiltrated the most secure facility in the Empire, eliminated dozens of trained security personnel, and extracted 12 prisoners without suffering any apparent casualties. "How?" General Vorthak whispered. "How is that even possible?" Director Zakth's tentacles curled in what was the equivalent of a frightened shrug among his species. "We underestimated them, all of us. We thought they were a primitive species that relied on crude technology and brute force tactics. But this level of training, this kind of operational precision, they've been preparing for this kind of war for much longer than we realized." Kethovorus looked around at his assembled commanders, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. The Empire had fought dozens of wars against various species throughout the galaxy. They had always won through superior technology and overwhelming numbers. But this was different. The humans weren't fighting like a conventional military force. They were fighting like predators, using patience, stealth, and surgical strikes to maximum effect. "What are our options?" he asked. "We accelerate the colony bombardment program," Vorthak said immediately. Eliminate all remaining human settlements before these terrorists can organize a larger resistance movement. Or, Zakth added quietly, we negotiate. The humans have demonstrated that they can reach us anywhere, anytime. Perhaps it would be wise to consider diplomatic solutions before this shadow war escalates further. Kethovorus stared at the tactical display, watching the red indicators that marked each human attack across Empire space. Each one Rep-E. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Retribution, staring at the tactical hologram that showed the successful extraction from Xerion Prime. 12 human diplomats and their families, including Ambassador Chen and her 8-year-old daughter Maya, were safe aboard the ship. But the cost of their rescue had been higher than anyone anticipated. Master Chief Reeves is gone, Admiral Harrison said quietly, reviewing the after-action report. He stayed behind to ensure the extraction team made it out. Took half the detention level with him when he triggered the charges. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the legendary sniper who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. James Reeves had been with the Corps since its inception, training entire generations of operatives in the art of invisible warfare. His sacrifice had saved 12 lives, but it had also revealed the existence of the Sniper Corps to the Empire. How are they reacting? Panic, mostly, Captain Morrison from Intelligence replied, consulting his tablet. Our assets report emergency security meetings on every major Empire world. They're doubling guard details, canceling public appearances, and some officials are relocating to deep space installations they think we can't reach. Sarah almost smiled at that. The Empire still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Earth's Sniper Corps didn't just operate on planets. They had trained for every environment where humans might need to project lethal force, zero-gravity installations, asteroid mining facilities, even the interiors of ships traveling at faster than light speeds. What about their military response? Admiral Harrison's expression darkened. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to accelerate their colony bombardment program. Instead of using the attacks as psychological warfare, they're planning to eliminate all remaining human settlements within the next 30 days. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. 43 colony worlds, 8 million civilian lives, men, women, and children who had done nothing except choose to build new homes among the stars. The Empire wanted to commit genocide to stop a few dozen snipers from conducting targeted operations against their leadership. Sir, that can't be allowed to happen. It won't, Harrison said firmly.
Earth has authorized Operation Nemesis.
Every Sniper Corps operative currently in Empire space is being activated simultaneously. No more surgical strikes, no more psychological warfare. We're going to eliminate every person who participated in the decision to murder human children, starting with the top of their command structure. A new hologram materialized above the briefing table, showing detailed personnel files of Empire leadership. Sarah recognized many of the faces from the target assessment she'd been preparing. High Admiral Kethovorus, General Vorthak, Director Zakth, and dozens of other military and political figures who had signed off on the colony attacks. How many operatives do we have in position? Classified, Harrison replied, but sufficient for the mission. The Corps has been preparing for this scenario for over 20 years. Every major Empire installation, every government facility, every military command center has at least one operative within striking distance. Captain Morrison brought up a new display, showing the galactic map with timing coordinates. The strikes will be coordinated to occur within a 6-hour window. We want the Empire leadership to understand that distance and security mean nothing to us. No matter where they hide, no matter how many guards they post, human justice will find them. Sarah studied the operation timeline. It was ambitious beyond anything she'd ever seen attempted. Simultaneous assassinations across dozens of star systems, requiring split-second timing and flawless execution. If even one operative was detected early, it could compromise the entire operation. What about collateral damage? Minimized wherever possible, Harrison answered. The Corps isn't targeting civilians or low-level personnel. This is specifically about the individuals who made the decision to murder our children. But Sarah, I won't lie to you. Some of these operations will be messy. The Empire's leadership won't go down quietly. The briefing room fell silent as everyone contemplated what was about to unfold. Operation Nemesis would essentially decapitate the Empire's command structure in a single coordinated strike. It would be the most ambitious assassination campaign in galactic history. When do we begin? Sarah asked, The operation is already underway. First phase started 3 hours ago. As if summoned by his words, alerts began appearing on the tactical display. Real-time intelligence feeds from across Empire space showed the beginning of Operation Nemesis in devastating detail. On the mining world of Korvax VII, Captain Luna Rodriguez had spent 2 years working as a maintenance engineer in the Orbital Processing Station, where General Threxnell commanded the 3rd Engineering Corps. The general had personally supervised the construction of the orbital bombardment platforms used to destroy human colonies. Taking pride in the efficiency of his weapon designs, Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment since she'd first seen the footage of burning schools on New Geneva. She'd learned the station's routine perfectly, mapped every corridor and maintenance shaft, and identified the optimal time to strike. General Threxnell always took his evening meal alone in his private quarters, reviewing technical reports while his security detail waited outside. The general never saw Rodriguez emerge from the ventilation system above his dining area, never felt the tiny puncture wound from the modified medical injector that delivered a carefully designed toxin into his bloodstream. He simply felt suddenly tired, closed his eyes for what he thought was a brief rest, and never woke up. Rodriguez left behind a small card on the general's desk with a simple message. For the children of New Geneva. She was back in the maintenance tunnels and heading for her emergency extraction point before the general's body was discovered. Simultaneously, on the diplomatic world of Proxia Station, Staff Sergeant David Kim was concluding his own mission against Admiral Yexthul, who had commanded the destroyer squadron that bombarded the children's hospitals on Harmony 7. Kim had infiltrated the Admiral's personal staff 6 months earlier, posing as a cultural attaché studying Empire military traditions. Admiral Yexthul's weakness was his ego. He loved showing off his collection of war trophies to visiting dignitaries, including personal items taken from the destroyed human colonies. The Admiral was particularly proud of a small stuffed animal he'd retrieved from one of the hospitals, claiming it belonged to a human child who learned the price of resistance. Kim waited until Yexthul was alone with his trophy collection, then used a modified sonic disruptor to paralyze the Admiral's nervous system. As Yexthul lay helpless but conscious, Kim placed the stuffed animal on the Admiral's chest and spoke softly. This belonged to a 6-year-old girl named Emma. She was in the hospital for a broken leg when you destroyed it. Her parents will never know what happened to her body, but they'll know that justice found you. Kim left Yexthul paralyzed but alive, trapped in his own body with his stolen trophies surrounding him. The Admiral would spend the rest of his life unable to move or speak, but fully aware of what he had done and why he was being punished. The reports kept coming in as Operation Nemesis unfolded across the galaxy. Director Zakth, found dead in his supposedly secure office with no signs of forced entry. General Kexavan, eliminated while reviewing troop deployments from his armored command bunker. Admiral Sethrak, killed during a diplomatic reception, when a waiter turned out to be something other than what he seemed. Each elimination was accompanied by evidence of the specific atrocity that had earned that individual a place on the Corps' target list. Photos of murdered children, recordings of bombardment orders, personal items recovered from destroyed colonies. The Empire's leadership was learning, one death at a time, that their victims had names and faces and people who remembered them. But the most ambitious operation was yet to come. High Admiral Keith Voris, the Supreme Commander of Empire forces, was protected by the most sophisticated security system in the galaxy. He rarely left the heavily fortified command complex on Zerion Prime, and when he did travel, it was aboard heavily armed battleships surrounded by entire fleets. The Corps had been planning Keth Voris's elimination for 3 years. Master Sergeant Ana Santos had infiltrated his personal guard detail, proving her loyalty through a series of increasingly dangerous missions that had earned her access to the High Admiral's inner circle. She was one of only 12 beings in the galaxy authorized to carry weapons in Keth Voris's presence. Tonight, as Keth Voris reviewed reports of the mysterious deaths plaguing his command structure, Santos stood at attention behind his desk with the other guards. The High Admiral was growing increasingly paranoid, convinced that human infiltrators were somehow penetrating Empire security, despite all evidence to the contrary. "How many is that now?" Keth Voris asked his aide. 17 confirmed eliminations in the past 6 hours, sir. All high-ranking officers involved in the colony bombardment operations. Our security analysts believe we're dealing with a coordinated assassination campaign. Santos listened impassively as Kethvoris and his staff discussed countermeasures. Enhanced security protocols, complete lockdowns of all military facilities, emergency relocati. The Empire's response to Operation Nemesis was swift and brutal. Within 12 hours of High Admiral Kethvoris's assassination, emergency protocols activated across every Imperial world. Martial law was declared, communication networks were monitored, and mass arrests began targeting anyone with suspected human connections. General Vorthak, now the highest-ranking survivor of the Empire's military leadership, stood in the emergency command center that had been hastily established in the deep bunkers beneath Xerion Prime. Around him, the remaining officers worked frantically to coordinate their response to what they were calling the human terrorist uprising. Status report, Vorthak demanded, his scaled voice echoing off the reinforced walls. Colonel Hexaval, the new intelligence director, consulted his data tablets with shaking hands. 23 confirmed eliminations across 17 star systems. Every victim was directly involved in the colony bombardment operations. The precision is unprecedented. They somehow identified everyone in our chain of command who participated in the planning or execution. What about our counterintelligence sweeps? We've arrested over 400 suspected human sympathizers and collaborators. Interrogations are ongoing, but so far we haven't identified any of the actual operatives. It's as if they simply vanished after completing their missions. Vorthak stared at the tactical display showing the locations of each assassination. The human operatives had struck simultaneously across impossible distances, then disappeared without leaving any trace. Some of the targets had been eliminated in facilities that should have been completely secure, while others had died in the middle of heavily guarded public events. How do we fight an enemy we can't see? He muttered. Sir, Colonel Hexavel said hesitantly, perhaps we should consider accelerating the colony elimination program. If we can destroy the remaining human settlements quickly enough, it might force their government to recall these operatives. Vorthak considered this. The plan to systematically eliminate all human colonies had been delayed while they dealt with the assassination crisis, but maybe that had been a mistake. The humans had proven they could reach any Imperial leader, but they were still vastly outnumbered. If the Empire could destroy their population base quickly enough, the terrorist operations would become meaningless. How long to deploy the bombardment fleets? 72 hours for full deployment. We can begin with the closest colonies within 24 hours. Do it. I want every human settlement reduced to ash. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. But even as Vorthak gave the order, events were already moving beyond his control. In the deepest levels of the bunker complex, maintenance technician Ellen Ung was completing the mission she'd been preparing for over 2 years. Ung had been part of the engineering team that built the bunker's life support systems, giving her intimate knowledge of its most vulnerable points. The Empire had designed the bunker to survive direct orbital bombardment, enemy invasion, even the complete destruction of the planet's surface. But they hadn't considered the possibility that their enemy was already inside, had been inside since before the bunker was even activated. Ing had spent months carefully positioning microcharges at critical junctions throughout the air circulation system. Not enough explosive to cause immediate structural damage, but sufficient to introduce a specially designed aerosol compound that would slowly saturate the bunker's atmosphere. The compound was based on human neurochemical research, specifically targeting the Empire species' unique nervous system structures. The effect wouldn't be immediately lethal. Instead, it would gradually degrade cognitive function, causing confusion, paranoia, and increasingly poor decision-making. The Empire's leadership would literally lose their ability to think clearly while believing they were operating at peak efficiency. NG triggered the release mechanism and began her extraction sequence. Within 6 hours, the compound would reach sufficient concentration to begin affecting everyone in the bunker. Within 24 hours, the entire Empire command structure would be operating under the influence of a mind-altering agent that would make them increasingly unstable and unpredictable. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other Sniper Corps operatives were implementing the next phase of their campaign. If the Empire wanted to escalate to total war, humanity would show them what total war really meant. On the fortress world of Grimhold, Master Sergeant Jake Morrison had infiltrated the Empire's primary weapons manufacturing facility. Instead of targeting personnel, Morrison's mission was industrial sabotage on a massive scale. He'd spent 18 months learning the facility's production systems, identifying critical components, and mapping the complex supply chains that kept the Empire's war machine running. Morrison's target was the quantum cascade generators that powered the Empire's orbital bombardment weapons. Each generator required rare isotopes that could only be processed at this single facility, making it an irreplaceable bottleneck in the Empire's production capacity. Using a combination of computer viruses, physical sabotage, and carefully timed equipment failures, Morrison triggered a cascade failure that destroyed not just the current production run, but the specialized equipment needed to manufacture the generators. The explosion was visible from orbit and would set back Empire weapons production by months, possibly years. On the trade hub of Commerce Station, Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos was targeting the Empire's financial infrastructure. Santos had infiltrated the Central Banking Authority by posing as a currency analyst from a neutral species. Her mission was to demonstrate that if the Empire wanted to commit genocide, humanity could make the economic cost unbearable. Santos had spent months mapping the complex financial networks that funded the Empire's military operations. With carefully placed computer viruses and manipulation of currency exchange systems, she triggered a massive market collapse that destroyed trillions of credits in imperial wealth. Military contracts were canceled, supply agreements fell through, and the Empire's member species began questioning whether the war against humanity was worth the economic chaos it was causing. But perhaps the most devastating operation was taking place in the Empire's communication networks. Technical Sergeant Alex Chen had infiltrated the central data processing facility that handled encrypted military communications across the galaxy. Instead of simply disrupting the network, Chen was selectively intercepting and modifying orders to create maximum confusion. Bombardment fleets received contradictory deployment orders. Supply convoys were redirected to empty systems. Combat units were ordered to attack each other due to identification errors in their targeting systems. The Empire's military machine was slowly turning against itself as corrupted information flowed through their command structure. The effects were already becoming visible on the Empire's tactical displays. Fleet movements that made no strategic sense, resource allocations that contradicted established priorities, military commanders issuing orders that directly contradicted instructions they'd given hours earlier. General Vorthak, still unaware that his bunker's atmosphere was gradually being poisoned, stared at reports of increasing chaos throughout Imperial space. His bombardment fleets were reporting mechanical failures, communication breakdowns, and even mutinies among crews who questioned orders to commit genocide. "What's happening to our forces?" he demanded. Colonel Hexaval, himself beginning to feel the early effects of Ung's neurochemical compound, struggled to make sense of the conflicting reports. "Sir, we're experiencing systematic failures across all operational areas. Equipment malfunctions, communication disruptions, supply chain breakdowns. It's almost as if what? As if someone with detailed knowledge of our systems is deliberately sabotaging our entire infrastructure." The horrible truth was beginning to dawn on Vorthak, though his chemically impaired thinking made it difficult to process the implications. The human operatives weren't just assassinating Imperial leaders. They were systematically dismantling the Empire's ability to wage war, piece by piece, system by system. "How long have they been inside our networks?" "Unknown, sir. Based on the sophistication of these attacks, possibly years, maybe decades." Vorthak felt his scaled skin go cold. The Empire had been infiltrated from the very beginning, probably since the first human colonies were established. While Imperial leaders had dismissed humans as primitive and technologically inferior, human intelligence services had been positioning assets throughout Empire space, learning their systems, mapping their weaknesses, and preparing for exactly this kind of total warfare. "Can we stop them?" "Sir, at this point we're not even sure how many of them there are or where they're positioned. They could be anywhere, anyone. Every technician, every maintenance worker, every clerk could potentially be a human operative." The paranoia that statement generated would have been devastating under normal circumstances. With Ung's neurochemical compound affecting his brain chemistry, it pushed Vorthak over the edge into complete irrationality. Arrest everyone, he ordered. Every non-imperial species in our territory. Every worker, every contractor, every civilian who might have contact with our systems. I want them all detained and interrogated. Sir, that would be over 2 billion individuals across hundreds of worlds. We don't... The mass arrests ordered by General WarHFY triggered exactly the response that Earth's Strategic Command had hoped for. Across the Empire's hundreds of member worlds, civilian populations that had remained neutral in the human conflict suddenly found themselves targets of Imperial paranoia. Families were torn apart, businesses were shuttered, and entire communities were herded into detention facilities with no charges or legal protections. Captain Sarah Chen watched the intelligence feeds from her position aboard the Retribution, now positioned at the edge of Empire space where they could monitor the unfolding chaos. The reports painted a picture of an empire tearing itself apart from within. 17 member species have formally protested the detention orders, Admiral Harrison reported, reviewing the latest diplomatic intercepts. 3 have threatened to withdraw from the empire entirely. The Galaxian Trade Federation has already suspended all commercial relationships with Imperial worlds. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the locations of major detention facilities. Over 50 million beings had been arrested in the past week, creating a logistical nightmare for Empire security forces. Military units had been pulled from frontline positions to guard civilian prisoners, leaving critical installations undermanned and vulnerable. Are our operatives taking advantage of the situation? Beyond our most optimistic projections, Harrison replied with grim satisfaction. The Empire's security apparatus is completely overwhelmed. Our assets are moving freely through systems that would normally be impregnable. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority transmission. The holographic projector activated, showing the figure of Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez in full combat gear, standing in what appeared to be the control room of an Empire military facility. Priority transmission from Operation Ghost Hawk, Vasquez reported. We have successfully infiltrated the Central Fleet Coordination Facility on Nexus Station. All Empire bombardment fleets are now operating under compromised command protocols. Sarah leaned forward. Nexus Station was the Empire's primary naval command center, responsible for coordinating fleet movements across dozens of star systems. If the Corps had taken control of their communication networks... What's your status, Sergeant? We've been inserting false orders into their command structure for the past 18 hours. Fleet Admiral Corthix believes he's coordinating a systematic bombardment of human colonies. In reality, his fleets are being repositioned to create strategic vulnerabilities that our main forces can exploit. The tactical display shifted to show Empire fleet positions across the galaxy. Instead of the coordinated deployment pattern that would be optimal for attacking human colonies, the Imperial fleets were scattered and isolated, many positioned where they could be easily surrounded and destroyed by concentrated human forces. How long can you maintain the deception? Unknown. The neurochemical compound we introduced to their command bunker is affecting their cognitive abilities, but they're starting to notice inconsistencies in fleet positioning. We estimate another 12 to 16 hours before they realize what's happening. Admiral Harrison stepped closer to the projector. Sergeant, we're accelerating Operation Thunderstrike. All human fleets are moving to intercept the isolated Empire forces. Can you maintain coordination long enough for our ships to reach optimal positions? Affirmative, sir. My team has complete control of their communication networks. When you're ready to spring the trap, we can cut their coordination entirely, leaving each fleet operating in isolation. The transmission ended, leaving the command staff to contemplate the magnitude of what the Corps had achieved. Not only had they eliminated the Empire's leadership and sabotaged their infrastructure, they had now turned the Empire's own fleet coordination system against them. How many ships are we talking about? Sarah asked. Intelligence estimates over 400 Empire warships scattered across 17 systems, Admiral Harrison replied. If we can hit them before they realize they've been deceived, we can eliminate a significant portion of their naval capacity in a single coordinated strike. But even as the trap was being prepared, other Corps operatives were completing missions that would have lasting consequences beyond the immediate military campaign. On the Empire capital world of Xerion Prime, technical specialist David Park had spent 6 months infiltrating the planetary communication grid that connected the Empire's member species. Park's mission wasn't sabotage in the traditional sense. Instead, He was preparing to broadcast a message that would reach every communication device on every Empire world simultaneously. The message would consist of the execution orders for the human colony attacks, complete with the names and faces of every Empire official who had participated in the decision. More importantly, the broadcast would include the actual footage of the colony bombardments that the Empire had tried to keep classified. Videos of schools burning, hospitals destroyed, children's bodies in the rubble of their homes. The Empire's member species would see exactly what their government had done in their name. "Park to command," came the encrypted transmission. "Package is ready for delivery, awaiting your authorization." Sarah looked at Admiral Harrison, understanding the weight of the decision. Once that broadcast went out, there would be no hiding the Empire's atrocities from their own people. The political consequences would be devastating, but they would also ensure that the galaxy understood why humanity had declared total war against the Empire. "Send it," Harrison ordered. Across the Empire's 300-member worlds, the normal flow of entertainment, news, and commercial broadcasts suddenly cut to black. For a moment, trillions of beings stared at blank screens, wondering if their communication systems had malfunctioned. Then the images began. The first thing they saw was High Admiral Keith Voris signing the execution order for the human colony attacks. The document was clearly visible, showing the official Empire seal and the signatures of every military leader who had approved the operation. The audio was equally clear, as Keith Voris explained to his staff that the bombardment of civilian targets was intended to break human morale through the elimination of their youngest generation. Then came the footage from the attacks themselves. The Empire had recorded everything for their military archives, creating a detailed record of their atrocities. The broadcast showed orbital bombardment platforms targeting schools and hospitals with surgical precision. It showed Empire officers celebrating as they watched human children die. It showed the aftermath: smoking ruins where communities had once thrived, small bodies pulled from collapsed buildings, families destroyed by calculated cruelty. But perhaps most devastating was the footage of Empire officials discussing the attacks afterward. General Vorthak describing the operation as highly successful, Admiral Zethkar joking about the efficiency of targeting educational facilities, Director Zakth recommending similar attacks against other resistant species. The broadcast continued for 2 hours, methodically documenting every aspect of the Empire's campaign against human children. When it ended, the normal communication networks resumed, but the damage was done. Every being in Empire space had seen their government's true nature. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On Calax Prime, mass protests erupted as millions of civilians demanded the arrest of their planetary governor for supporting the Empire's actions. The Zentari Federation formally withdrew from the Empire and opened diplomatic relations with Earth. 3 member species declared independence entirely, refusing to be associated with a government that targeted children. But the most significant response came from within the Empire's own military. Admiral Yexthul, commanding the Third Fleet, broadcast a message declaring that his forces would no longer follow orders from the current Imperial leadership. Within hours, 17 other fleet commanders had joined what became known as the Honor Rebellion, refusing to participate in any operations targeting civilian populations. General Vorthak, his thinking increasingly impaired by the neurochemical compound, watched his empire dissolving in real time. Member species were withdrawing, fleets were mutinying, and civilian populations across hundreds of worlds were demanding justice for the murdered human children. "How do we regain control?" he asked his remaining staff, his voice slurred from the chemical effects. Colonel Hexaval, equally affected, could barely focus on his reports.
Sir, perhaps
we should consider surrender terms. The humans have demonstrated that they can reach us anywhere, destroy our infrastructure, and turn our own people against us. Continuing this war may not be practical. Surrender? Vorthak's scaled face twisted with rage. "We are the Empire. We do not surrender to primitive species. Sir, with respect, they don't appear to be as primitive as our intelligence suggested." Around the bunker, the remaining Empire officers struggled with the cognitive effects of their poisoned atmosphere. Decision-making became increasingly difficult, strategic thinking deteriorated, and paranoia reached pathological levels. Some began to suspect their own colleagues of being human infiltrators. Others became convinced that the entire war was an elaborate deception. As the Empire's leadership descended into chemically induced madness, Earth's fleets moved into position for the final phase. 6 months after the broadcast that exposed the Empire's atrocities, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly established Galactic Justice Tribunal on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Below, representatives from over 300 species had gathered to witness the formal dissolution of the Zerithian Empire and the establishment of new galactic governance structures. The war had ended not with a final battle, but with complete collapse. Operation Thunderstrike had destroyed the scattered Empire fleets exactly as planned, eliminating over 400 warships without significant human casualties. But the real victory had come from within, as member species abandoned the Empire and its military forces refused to follow increasingly irrational orders from leaders whose minds had been shattered by neurochemical sabotage. General Vorthak had been found in his bunker, catatonic and unresponsive, surrounded by the bodies of officers who had turned their weapons on each other in paranoid delusion. The few surviving Empire leaders had been captured alive, though many were no longer mentally competent to stand trial. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral Harrison joined Sarah at the observation window. 3 years ago, the Empire controlled half the galaxy. Now they're just another entry in the historical archives. Sarah nodded, watching as the formal surrender documents were signed by the remnants of Imperial leadership. The ceremony was largely symbolic. The Empire had ceased to exist as a functional government weeks earlier when their last member species withdrew support. What's the final casualty count? On our side? Remarkably low. We lost 37 Sniper Corps operatives during the entire campaign, mostly to accidents or equipment failures rather than enemy action. The Empire lost approximately 40,000 military personnel, most during the fleet engagements. The numbers seemed almost impossible. Humanity had fought and won a galactic war with fewer than 40 casualties, while their enemies had lost 40,000. It was a testament to the effectiveness of the Corps' infiltration and sabotage tactics, but also to the Empire's complete failure to understand what they were fighting. And the colonies? Harrison's expression darkened. No further attacks after the first wave. The bombardment fleets were neutralized before they could reach their targets. All 43 remaining human settlements are secure. Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. 8 million human lives had been saved by the Corps' actions. The price had been steep, 70,000 children murdered in the initial attacks. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. What happens to the Empire's former territory? The Galactic Council is establishing a transitional authority. Former member species are being granted full independence, and disputed regions will be administered jointly until permanent governance can be arranged. Most importantly, they've adopted the Human Rights Charter as the foundation for all future interspecies law. The Human Rights Charter had been humanity's contribution to the new galactic order. Based on centuries of Earth's legal and ethical development, it established fundamental principles that would prevent another empire from committing atrocities like the colony bombardments. Any government that targeted civilians, especially children, would face immediate intervention by the galactic community. And the Corps? Admiral Harrison smiled grimly. Officially, the Earth Sniper Corps was disbanded 6 months ago. All operatives returned to conventional military service. Unofficially, well, let's just say that anyone thinking about threatening human civilians in the future might want to reconsider. Sarah understood. The Corps would continue to exist in the shadows, watching for threats to innocent human lives and ready to respond with the same ruthless efficiency they demonstrated against the Empire. The galaxy had learned that humanity protected its own with a dedication that transcended conventional military doctrine. A new figure appeared on the observation deck, Ambassador Chen, recently rescued from Empire captivity, and now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic representative to the Galactic Council. Her 8-year-old daughter Maya walked beside her, still showing signs of trauma from her imprisonment, but gradually recovering under careful medical supervision. Sarah, Ambassador Chen said warmly, I wanted to thank you personally for everything the military did to bring us home. I'm just glad we got you back safely, ma'am. Maya tugged on Sarah's uniform sleeve. Are you one of the ghost soldiers? The ones who saved us? Sarah knelt down to the child's level, thinking about Master Chief Reeves and the other operatives. who had given their lives to rescue the prisoners from Zerion Prime. I work with some very brave people who believe that children should be safe no matter where they live. They made sure you could come home. Will the bad aliens come back? No, Sarah said firmly. They won't. And if anyone else ever tries to hurt children like you, those same brave people will stop them. Maya nodded solemnly, then brightened. Want to see my drawing? It's of the ghost soldiers saving everyone. The child's artwork was crude but unmistakably powerful. Stick figures in dark clothing rescuing other stick figures from angular alien shapes. At the top of the page, she had written in careful letters, "Thank you for protecting us." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes as she looked at the drawing. This was what the Corps had really been fighting for. Not military victory or political advantage, but the simple right of children to grow up safe from harm. The 70,000 who had died in the initial attacks would never see peace again, but millions of others would live because of the price that had been paid. Thank you, Maya. This is beautiful. As the formal ceremonies continued below, Sarah found herself thinking about the future. The Empire was gone, but the galaxy was vast and full of dangers. There would always be species that believed might made right, governments that saw civilians as acceptable targets, leaders who thought children were expendable in pursuit of their goals. They would learn, as the Empire had learned, that humanity had a very different perspective on those questions. Earth's Sniper Corps would be watching from the shadows, ready to deliver swift and terrible justice to anyone who threatened innocent lives. The memorial service for the 70,000 murdered children was held simultaneously on all human worlds. Sarah attended the ceremony on New Geneva, where the reconstructed Meridian Children's Academy now stood on the site of the original school. The new building was beautiful, filled with light and laughter as children played safely in classrooms that had been rebuilt from rubble. But outside the school, a simple black granite wall listed the names of every child who had died in the Empire's attacks. 70,000 names, each representing a life cut short, a future stolen, a family forever changed. At the base of the memorial, fresh flowers appeared every day, placed by parents, teachers, and strangers who wanted to ensure the children were remembered. The inscription at the top of the memorial was simple. They were protected. Below that, in smaller letters, their guardians remember. General Morrison from the Sniper Corps attended the ceremony in full dress uniform, one of the few times the Corps had acknowledged its existence publicly. When asked by reporters about the Corps' role in the war, his response was characteristically brief. 70,000 children died because we weren't ready. That will never happen again. As Sarah stood before the memorial wall, reading name after name of children who would never grow up, she made her own silent promise. The Corps had proven that humanity could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. That capability would be maintained, refined, and passed down to future generations. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of species that might one day decide human children were expendable. When that day came, they would discover what the Empire had learned too late, that humanity's most dangerous warriors weren't the ones you could see coming. They were the ones you never saw at all. Until justice arrived on silent wings and reminded the universe that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The war was over. The children were safe, and somewhere in the shadows, Earth's guardians continued their eternal watch, ready to protect the innocent from any threat that might emerge from the dark between the stars. In the end, the Empire had taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. If you want to terrorize humanity by murdering their children, you had better be prepared for their parents to respond with the cold, patient fury of apex predators defending their young. The Sniper Corps was humanity's reminder that in a universe full of predators, humans had evolved to be the most dangerous hunters of all.